Okay, so guys, you're welcome once again to my YouTube channel. We are continuing with our discussion on the theories or models of psychopathology. Yes, we have tried to, in other videos, try to look at the criteria for defining abnormality, and we have considered some models. What is a theory? Then we looked at the demonological theory, the biological perspective. We looked at the psychodynamic theory. Now today we will talk about the behaviorist perspective or the behavioral model of psychopathology. Yes, and please, it is important we try to follow very well because it's a very important topic. Yes, the behaviorist perspective or behavioral model of psychopathology, we try to do something in every theory we are looking at. We try to know what they say about psychopathology or psychological disorder, the etiology. What do they say that is the cause of any psychological disorder, right? So we also try to look at their assumptions. That is what they say, right? And we look at their major explanations and assumptions, and we try to look at their treatments. And again, we try to know if there are the limitations of those theories. So we again now, the behavioral perspective. This perspective emphasizes that we as individuals behave, that our behavior is as a result of our response to the stimuli in the environment, our responses to stimuli in the environment. For example, if I want to move my hand, I will consider there is a laptop in my face, right? I'll try to move away. If I feel this is a fire going on, right, I'll try to avoid it. Okay, another example of this behaviorist model, I'm just trying to give an example. I will talk about it. Imagine a small child that sees a candle, a lit candle, and the child goes there, and you may always try to go, don't touch it, it's hot, it's going to hurt you, right? This is the social learning theory, where there are people, significant others, trying to nurture the child, teach the child, and the child is learning and observing, right? But there is another way. What if the child goes and touches the fire and they didn't hurt the child, right? I'm sure you know that at that point, learning has taken place. Why? Because the child will not repeat it again. The child will be afraid of that fire. There are some other things also that we are exposed to that oftentimes we learn to respond to those things the way they are. If a guy goes and receives a heartbreak, let me use that word, or let's say a lady serves you breakfast, right? At that point, you see some irrational, let's say, adjustment. You hear somebody say, all girls are terrible, all boys are this, oh no, I don't want anymore, right? Now, that is learning has taken place, but that is in a negative form, right? Now, remember, I'm trying to ensure something here. The major thing you will remember in this behaviorist perspective is that they believe that psychopathology is learned. It's learned. Now, what am I trying to say? They believe that the same way, one of the major assumptions is that they say that the same way you learn a normal behavior is the same way we also learn abnormal behavior. The same way we learn to respond to several stimuli in the environment, is the same way that is in the normal way, is the same way we acquire abnormal behavior, also by responding, or in the way we respond to these environmental stimuli. That is, according to these persons, the behavioral perspective. The proponents say we are going to talk about them later, but let's try to emphasize more on this major thing they are talking about, their major tenet. So what is behavioral perspective or model of psychopathology saying? They are saying that normal and abnormal behaviors, or let's say normal and abnormal behavior are being governed and sustained by the same learning principles. By the same learning principles, that is your irrational responses to some environmental stimuli is what they say. That is the etiology of psychopathology. Yes, or psychological disorder. What am I saying? Summary: psychopathology will result from irrational learning processes, negative learning, or in other words, there are behaviors we also learned. When you hear your friends saying this and this happen, and no, I can't, that's why some people grew up, they don't like maths, because they grew up seeing their elder ones saying maths is difficult, right? That's why some people develop several sexual disorders, because they believe that what they heard people saying sex is difficult or is painful. You see some that have gone through rape, right? And they may never want to engage in it because of the trauma. That trauma is a learned behavior. They have learned that this is painful. They have learned that this is a horrible experience. Some persons have bad relationships today because of their personality type, because of the kind of behavior and personality they have acquired. Reason: because of the kind of parents they had, because of the kind of environment they grew up, right? You see that persons that grew up in a place where there are beer parlors or prostitute house, I don't know what they call them, right? You see that they are more acquainted with the kind of behavior around there, right? So we learned them. The same way we learn good behaviors or normal behaviors is the same way we learn abnormal behavior, according to this theory. So the major theories under this behavioral perspective or model of psychopathology is where you'll be seeing theories like classical conditioning theory, which emphasize learning by contiguity, that is association learning, paired association learning. Then we have operant conditioning theory, that is learning by reward and punishment, or reinforcement and punishment. And then we also have the social cognitive theory, which is learning by observation and imitation, which is equal to modeling. Observation and imitation equal to modeling. Very important. So what am I trying to say? These are the theories under the model of psychopathology. You understand that all these things have their learning processes. Like classical conditioning, we know the work of Ivan Pavlov, the propounder, in 1909, 1904, 1909, by Ivan Pavlov, the Russian physiologist, which was able to make a dog acquire that response or new behavior, responding to an ordinary bear without any reinforcement. You know, that is a new behavior, right? And remember, J.B. Watson in 1924, in conjunction with his research assistant Rosalind Rayner, performed the Little Albert experiment, which we all know. We discussed it in our earlier first year courses, right? We can check it out there. So you understand there you see how J.B. Watson was able to make that child learn a psychological disorder. Remember, they are emphasizing that we learn them, right? So that is the first time an organism, a human organism, was was exposed to stimuli, and through this classical conditioning, he learned a psychological disorder. I'm using that word purposefully, right? But I would have said he learned a new behavior. And remember, we say just as we learn new normal behavior, the same way we learn abnormal. For emphasis, and those who might have forgotten about Bandera's J.B. Watson's little Albert experiment, we remember that the small boy Albert was given force, like things like teddy bear that have force, head of a Santa Claus that have force in the body, and the child would love to play with them. He loved to play with them, but at every time interval, J.B. Watson will come at the back of the child and hit a very big bell, like with an iron, make a very loud sound. The child will startle and start crying. The next time he'll be given the same thing, and the same thing will be repeated, and the child will start crying, right? And before you know it, right, the child now learns. In fact, just seeing those falls and teddy bear that he loved initially, he will start crying because he has acquired to associate these things to what? To the fear he has. And that is the kind of disorder we call today specific disorders. The specific phobia, that's one of the anxiety disorders we'll discuss very soon. So you see how this happens when you see persons that are having downtimes in their, maybe just you see a man that got married, and before you know it, his business start going down and everything. Before you know it, he start associating his bad outcomes to his wife. You're a bad energy, you're a bad this, you're a bad luck, you brought this, you brought that. You know, these are for example, right? These are examples of that classical conditioning. Then you see operant conditioning, which I've given an example. Yes, so you see the operant conditioning. That one is by learning by punishment. The experiences, I am purposefully not wanting to go deep into this. We only need to understand the major tenet. This going deep into these specific theories is a final year course, because they are very deep. There are a lot of theories that are even under the principle of classical conditioning and operant conditioning and social learning theories, right? And there are multi-dimensional of it also, multifaceted approach to it too. But for the purpose of this course, we should understand that the theory of the behavioral theory of psychopathology says that psychopathology is learned. And they further say that the same way we learn normal behavior, or they say that normal and abnormal behavior are being governed and are sustained by the same learning principles. So we know social learning theory. Next semester, that is second semester, or yes, later we'll still discuss things like substance abuse, right? Or substance dependence, as it is called also. So you see that a child that the father smokes or drinks may end up learning to do those things, right? So that is an example of how through social learning theory we acquire abnormal behavior. You acquire a lot of negative behavior from your significant others, especially the ones you look up to. We call them the models here, right? That's why most times those models on the television, some of them also sell bad dressing style, and some of them, you know, all of those things. You see how we acquire those negative, or say abnormal behaviors that are atypical to the norms of the society. So in conclusion, we understand that this behaviorist model, like you always know, they always want to see human beings as robots. They want to believe that if they want to teach you normal behavior, they will. If they want to teach you abnormal behavior, they will. They always feel that human beings are helpless and have no role to play in all of these things, but in the fact that our environment determines us and we also determine our environment. That's one of the principles of social learning theory by Albert Bandura. We call it the reciprocal influences or reciprocal determinism. So learning, very important. That is the behavioral model. and it's very important we get it to that point. And they see us as robots. That is one of their weakness. They are very reductionism. They reduce everything to just learning, stimulus and response in the environment. Stimulus and response in the environment. Remember that behavior is defined as individual's response to either internal or external stimulus, right? Our response to either internal or external stimulus, that is behavior. So they believe that our behavior, whether normal or abnormal behaviors, are nothing but responses we give to stimuli in the environment. And according to them, psychopathology resolve or come from what? Negative responses or abnormal responses to environmental stimuli. Thank you, and see you in the next video.